Our opening words around the ringing of our peace bowl this morning come from the poet Wendell Berry, who speaks to finding personal peace within this poem, The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night to the least sound, in fear of what my life and my family's lives will be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Good morning, It's it's wonderful to see everyone who is here in our temporary worship space, as well as all you lovely faces on Zoom. We're glad you're with us. We wish you were here, but it's lovely to have you on Zoom. Thanks for being here. Welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation, where love and community are at the heart of each service. I'm Bobby Bollinger, serving as your worship associate this morning. Our worship service this morning explores the theme of covenant. Our ministry here at Granite Peak is guided by our mission statement, which is as follows. We are a compassionate, spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Our children are being taught across the street this morning by our faith development coordinator, Sandra Palacios, whose morning lesson today is exploring the meaning behind our UU chalice. As part of their experience, the children will be making their own chalices using small terracotta pots. Thank you to all of the people who make this and every Sunday morning possible, whether you are a kitchen volunteer, a choir member, a musician, a teacher, a techie, or maybe you just showed up early to sweep the sidewalks. We are grateful for your service. We have another correction in your order of service today. There will not be the time for all ages. That will be put off for another service. If you are new or visiting us today, we'd like to extend a special invitation for you to stay for our social hour right here in this room after the service. We have coffee and refreshments, and we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. If you are curious about the events going on here, and we are a very busy congregation, you may read about them on our website, which is prescottuu.org, or in our weekly Peak newsletter, or in the monthly newsletter, The View, and we have a few copies of the paper copies of the September View on the back table for those of you who have not received it electronically. And if you haven't done so yet, please take a moment to silence all of your electronic devices.
Good morning. I am the Reverend Michelle LaGrave, she, her, and I am the minister of this congregation. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whether you've walked in or rolled in or zoomed in, whichever your pronouns, whomever you love, you are welcome here. You belong here. If you are here for the first time today, we'd like to extend a special welcome to you. If you are willing, would any of our visitors be comfortable introducing themselves, yourselves, and perhaps letting us know what brought you here this morning? I know this might be a little uncomfortable, and I'll share that this is only my second Sunday, so you're in good company. Would anyone like to introduce themselves? Okay. I'll bring the microphone to you. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And here's a pen, a Granite Peak pen. Do we have any other visitors here this morning who would like to introduce themselves? We have lots of already familiar faces. Okay, thank you.
We now join UU congregations around the world in the tradition of lighting our chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is our board president, Rick Denny. Our chalice lighting reading was adapted by Betsy Darr, and it reads, "May this chalice give light and warmth to our community when we are joyful and when we despair. And may we feel the warmth spread from our circle to wider and wider circles until all know that they belong to one circle of life."
And our opening words this morning come from David Blanchard. Do more than simply keep the promises made in your vow. Do something more. Keep promising. As time passes, keep promising new things, deeper things, vaster things, yet unimagined things. Promises that will be needed to fill the expanses of time and of love. Keep promising. Now let us rise together, either in body or in spirit, and join in singing our opening hymn, number 360, Here We Have Gathered. Please join me in saying the words of our covenant for the first time together, minister and congregation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together.
Our weekly offering supports the programs, staff, and operating expenses of our congregation. We donate to Granite Peak because this congregation has significant meaning in our lives. Our values often also speak to giving back to the greater community through our monthly Seeds of Support program. August's recipient, this last day of August, is our very own Empty Bowls, which is happening on Prescott's Courthouse Square in just 2 short weeks. Please read about them in your order of service and plan to be there to support local food banks in our community in the year ahead. All undesignated offerings each week are divided equally between Granite Peak and our Seeds of Support recipient. If you would like your entire gift to go to Seeds of Support, you must say so in the memo line of your check. Online donations may be made at our website at prescottuu.org. The morning offering will now be taken. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through your offerings. What is given with love is received with much gratitude. Blessed be. Granite Peak pauses each Sunday to recognize the joys and concerns of those among us. With the support of the congregation, members who have a personal joy or concern or are feeling gratitude or despair are invited to come forward and place a symbolic stone into the bowls of water on either side of the podium. May our feelings of care and connection with one another be recognized and felt during this time of meditation and prayer. I will place the first 2 stones, first one in loving memory of our longtime member and friend, Hugh Meyer, who passed away peacefully at home this week. And a second stone for Catherine Marsh, whose brother died very unexpectedly back in Massachusetts. She's back there now. May those who have come forward feel the embrace and support of this beloved community. So may it be. And now please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life, the words of which are in your order of service.
Our reading this morning is the Covenant for Free Worship by Universalist minister L. Griswold Williams. Now listen carefully because there's going to be a test later. Just kidding. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve mankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. To talk about covenant this morning, we must begin in the beginning. The question, of course, is where is the beginning? So I'll just choose one spot to start and we'll see how it goes. Perhaps the beginning happened in 1620 when a group of worshipers known as separatists from the Church of England gathered with a bunch of strangers about to disembark from a ship in a world new to them. There had been rumblings aboard the ship from people saying, since we're not in Virginia, which is where our land grant is from the King James, putting aside for the moment whether King James had any right, of course he did not, to grant land that didn't even belong to him, there is no government governing us, so we're just going to do as we please. So some of the leaders among the group on the ship who were stuck near Cape Cod, Provincetown, we now know it, decided that it would be wise to come up with a covenant for how they might govern themselves. This covenant was all of one sentence long. I don't know what the longest sentence ever written was, but I suspect this might be a contender. Are you ready to hear it? In the name of God, amen. That's a separate sentence, but that's how it starts. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and the honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. Now that covenant made among humans and in front of God was the first in this form that we know of to have happened in this part of the world, in the tradition from which we come. We as Unitarians and Universalists, regardless of our individual heritages, in terms of our religious heritage, go back to England. And through this particular congregation, did you all know that the congregation at Plymouth wound up being Unitarian once Unitarianism arose in this country? It did. Or perhaps the beginning was before 1620, when this group of English separatists found themselves in Leyden, Holland, and formed together as a congregation in a spiritual covenant. These covenants continued over time throughout our heritage, our religious heritage. John Winthrop authored a model of Christian charity in 1630, in which he explained what colonial covenants were all about. We are a company professing ourselves fellow members of Christ. We ought to account ourselves knit together by this bond of love. It is by a mutual consent between God and us. We are entered into covenant with him for this work. We must be knit together in this work as one man. We must delight in each other, make one another's condition our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in this work as members of the same body. The English separatists and Puritans were very community-oriented. Congregations were formed on the basis of covenants with each other. That doesn't mean arguments didn't ever arise or haven't ever arisen throughout the last 400 years. There is one that I remember quite well when I was living right outside Boston. The churches of Boston had a never-ending argument, I doubt it is still resolved, about whose congregation was the first to be planted in Boston. One church argued that it was the first congregation because it was the first church, the first congregation on this land of now called Boston. The other congregation argued that it was the first congregation in Boston because it had formed its covenant back in England before it had even set sail, and therefore was the oldest congregation in Boston. I don't know if anyone's ever going to win that one. And I think, it's mostly a friendly argument. So that practice of covenant making continued over the centuries in churches with congregational polity, which is what we have. And it continues to this day. We in this congregation have many covenants. We have the one that we say every Sunday at the beginning of the service, which encompasses this entire community and anyone who might join us be willing to join us, visit with us within that covenant. We also have covenants that different groups within the larger group make. The board has a covenant. Different committees and teams have covenants. Within Unitarian Universalism, most RE classes begin the church year by making a new covenant with that particular class for the year. And these are open. They are not set in stone. As new people join, as people's thoughts change over time, as new children join classes, our covenants are open for revision. We also have a covenant that we have made with all other UU congregations. Does anybody know what it is? I know you know it. You just might not realize it's a covenant. Our 7 principles, or 8 principles, are written in the form of a covenant. Within our Unitarian Universalist Association, Article 2 is the place where we have placed our covenant right in the bylaws. For many, many years, from the time just about that Unitarianism and Universalism joined together, up until about a year-ish, little more ago, our covenant took the form of principles. The first of which is we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, right? However, also within that article, within those bylaws, we require ourselves to review our covenant every so often, every couple decades or so, 15 to 20 years. I forget exactly what it is. For most of this time, these principles have stayed largely in place. There have been minor revisions here or there. There was a big movement to include an eighth principle, which individual congregations adopted, which has to do with anti-racism and anti-oppression. But this time, when it came to time to renew our covenant, we wound up making major changes. This process took years, 3 or 4 years of study, commissioning people to study and listen and learn and hear what people from all the different UU congregations had to say about our principles, to take all that feedback in, to come up with some rough drafts of what we might do newly and differently. And eventually, after a lot of really hard work, it passed. And while the principles remain a part of our heritage, and much of the language of the principles are now embedded in the new Article 2, they are no longer written in the form of principles. They are our values. Now here's the big trick. Has anybody memorized them yet? No, okay. So some people, oh, maybe one person did. Yay, good for you. So someone, I suspect in religious education somewhere in the country, came up with an acronym for our values, which is called JET-PIG. And some people have made little pigs with backpacks on them that can jet around so that we could remember our new values. So a little later in the season, I am going to have a sermon entirely based on our new values, and we'll talk about that. For now, what's important is that we have new values, and they are embedded in covenants. And to know that covenants are not unchangeable, that they can be renewed, reaffirmed, revised, expanded. Even more important to realize and remember is that our covenants are not about what we believe. Sometimes we say things like we believe in the first principle. It's not entirely correct. Individuals might believe in a principle or all of the principles. They are free to say that, but also embedded in Article 2 is a statement that we will not require anyone in any of our congregations to ascribe to any creeds. That is against the UUA bylaws. It's very, very clear. So instead, we talk about how we behave together, how we are together in community, how we form ourselves into one body. This goes way back. We make one another's condition our own. We rejoice together. We mourn together. We labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and our community in this work as members of the same body. That's what John Winthrop said about covenant in 1630. Covenant is and has always been about how we are together, how we care for each other, how we treat each other. So, back to that question about the beginning. How did the English separatists come up with these ideas? Well, they weren't new. They took them probably partly from living in Leyden near Jews who were refugees from Spain and learning how they had come together as congregations and in community following in the biblical tradition of covenant. And of course, even more so, they were well read in the Bible. The Bible had finally been printed in English a couple decades before this time, but not a long time before. And they knew the stories. Some of the stories you know, or maybe you know part of the story. We'll see how much of this one sounds familiar. Okay. You may have heard the story of Noah and the ark. Okay, so we've got the basic idea down. The question is, are you familiar with what led up to God deciding to destroy the entire world, to destroy his creation? Things had not been going well since the beginning of creation. Adam and Eve had both eaten of the apple from the tree of knowledge and been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Cain murdered his brother Abel. Violence continued in the land, and God was not pleased. So let's remember for a moment that we're talking about the first book, Berit, in the beginning, and it is not in the later Christian idea of what God is. We're talking about very old, ancient Israelite and Jewish ideas about God. So God is not all perfect, all powerful, all knowing. This God is very humanly and makes mistakes. He creates things and then is sorry he made them. So if he's perfect, he wouldn't have created the things wrongly in the first place, right? Okay, so this is a much longer problem, later problem with the Greeks and the Romans in the New Testament. But we're going back to the beginning, to the book of Genesis. So there's violence among the lands, and then the final straw comes, the straw that breaks the camel's back, as they say. God was not alone up in heaven back then. There were all sorts of divine beings and angels and whatnot. It was a pretty busy place up there. And there were divine beings that were known as the sons of God. And there were humans on earth that in this story are referred to as the daughters of humans. And the sons of God, those divine beings, thought that the daughters of humans, who were also human, were quite fair, and they came down from heaven and married the daughters of humans. Now, this was a major no-no. In all of the Hebrew scriptures, we do not like mixing our categories. We do not. Heaven is separate from earth. Divine is separate from profane. We do not mix them. So what happened, of course, after they were married, is that children were produced. And these children were known as the Nephilim, the superheroes. They were warriors of renown. We can call them superheroes because that's basically what they were describing. And hybrids between divine beings and human beings. And that really, really ticked God off. So God decided to destroy all of the world, all of creation. But he had a little problem named Noah. Noah was a really good person. He was seen as righteous in the eyes of God. So God decided that he would make a covenant with Noah. The deal was, Noah, you build this ark. Here are the directions for the ark. Here's how many animals you put on the ark, either 2 of each kind or 7 of each kind, depending on which part of the story you're reading. And then I will open the floodgates, and I will flood the earth. I will save you and your wife and your sons and their wives and all of these creatures so that we can begin creation again. God wanted a do-over. And that was basically his covenant with Noah. It was a do-over. So then, I'm going to pause for a moment. The understanding of what the world looked like back then is not the same as what we have now. Earth was basically flat. I mean, there were mountains and valleys and whatnot, but it was covered with a dome called the Rakia, And the dome had holes in it. That's how the lights from the heavens came in, and how the sun came in was through these holes. Is also how the rain came in, because remember, God separated out all these waters. And then in the foundation of the earth, there were also holes. And those were opened up to allow oceans and rivers and springs and fountains. So God opened all of these all at the same time and flooded the world. And then after 40 days and 40 nights, or maybe 150, we don't really know. There are two different stories woven together in the book of Genesis. And then months and months and months for the land to dry up after the rain. Noah finally came off with the family and the animals and made sacrifices, and God came down again and renewed his covenant with Noah. And he said, I will hang my bow up in the sky as a symbol of this covenant that we are making together, that I will never again destroy the entire earth, flood the entire earth, destroy all of creation. That is my promise to you. With water. There's a few caveats in there. God said he wouldn't destroy all of it. Didn't say anything about not destroying part of it, all of it. And here's the deal on Noah's part and all of Noah's children. They had to never eat the blood of an animal. First of all, they were given permission to eat animals. Before, they were all vegetarians. For real. So they were given permission to eat animals. They were prohibited from eating the blood of the animals because that was the life force and that belonged to God and must be poured out into the earth. And the other big rule was that they could not kill each other. He wanted an end to all of that violence. He didn't want that to come back again. And God would keep this covenant. And the rainbow was literally a bow, like a bow and arrow that he hung up in the sky. He hung up his weapon in the sky to remind himself that he had hung up the weapon, that he wasn't going to destroy everything ever again altogether. That's where the holes came from, the arrow to the bows, in the rakia and the foundations of the earth. Okay. So that might be the beginning of our story of covenants. There were more covenants later with Abraham and Moses, but the Noahide or Noahim covenant was the first that we know of in our biblical tradition, from which Judaism, Christianity, Unitarian Universalism, and Islam have all come out of. Today, our covenants include an element of the holy or the sacred, if not actually God. They are meant to be more important, more special than a mere promise. And they are made within communities of faith. There is some kind of spiritual element to the covenants that we make with each other. So I'm going to fast forward quite a bit in time until 1893, when L. Griswold Williams was born in New London, Connecticut. He later received a call to ministry. He went to Meadville Theological School, the same one we still have today, Meadville Lombard. He began his ministry as a circuit rider. He served congregations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and New York over the course of his ministry. But some problems began when he had his first congregation in Ohio. He was quite outspoken against the U.S. joining World War I, and he came under suspicion of the FBI for speaking out against the mistreatment of people of German descent here in the U.S. When he registered for the draft, he registered as a conscientious objector. That's for what we now know of as World War I. His church was quite unhappy with all of this. And so they did not renew his contract, and he had to go find a new church. So that is when he went to Pennsylvania and went to New York. It was a church not entirely friendly, but definitely more friendly to his pacifist leanings. When he was finally drafted, he was sent to northern France and put to work among the Friends Service Committee Reconstruction Service. And he was made to build shelters for displaced people in northern France who no longer had homes. While he did so, he often prayed. He was serving in northern France, building shelters, and he prayed. He prayed for the windows of the shelters to let love's dawn in, and he prayed for the doors of the shelters to let truth's pleasant ways out. Later, when he was back in the U.S., he created and published a book called Antiphonal Readings for Free Worship in 1933. That is the source of the original Williams Covenant, which many congregations adopted throughout the United States and then revised as they saw fit, as they needed. We heard the difference. I said it was a test. It's not really a test. I'm assuming that you heard the differences in his covenant from the covenant that we have together as a congregation. You, over time, and listening to other congregations' versions, probably came up with a covenant version that you wanted for this church. And I would love to hear the details of that story someday about how that happened. If anyone was around at the time or remembers it, that would be a great story to hear. Sadly, actually, I'll go back to a little bit more about him just because it's interesting. He was a member of the commission that produced the Hymns of the Spirit. For any of you old-time Unitarians or Universalists, you may remember that hymnal. It was way before the Gray hymnal. Throughout his ministry, he had urged intelligent penal reform, scientific birth control, and better international and interracial understanding. Things we're all still working on today. He was working on back in the 1930s. Sadly, he had a very tragic death. He was electrocuted by a device he created himself trying to relieve his stiff neck, and left behind a wife, children aged 9 and 7, and his mom. So what I want to say about all of this is that when Williams, a Universalist minister, was creating this covenant, he was coming out of the theology of his tradition. So those of you who are new, Unitarians and Universalists were two separate denominations before merging together in around 1960 to 61. Kids merged before adults because they're always more forward-thinking. The youth groups merged before the actual congregations did. So he was in this Universalist tradition in which Universalists believed that divine love was abundant and available to all, that love was never a question of worthiness. They saw or hoped for a world, an entire world, to be or to become a single family. They longed for a union of souls, something perhaps like an early precursor to how Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Doctor, thought of beloved community. Love and service. These are two values that very much define this congregation. In my short time here, I have already learned that. They are so evident, obvious, core to who you are. I want to reaffirm what we say in the covenant, that it is all about how we are together, that we need to pay attention to the verbs. We love, quest, seek, serve, covenant together. That is what we do. That is how we are. And what we do is we put our values in place. They're not belief statements, they're values. The values I see in our covenant include love, which is a noun as well as a verb, right? Truth, service, togetherness, community, peace, knowledge, freedom. All strands, all elements we can see through the centuries from those earliest covenants that were made in these new lands to which our religious ancestors came. So let's end by reciting our covenant together one more time. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. Amen, and blessed be. Todah, Todah, Todah. That's thank you in Hebrew, modern Hebrew. Now, let us sing together one more time, either rising in body or spirit for number 368. Now let us sing. Rick, will you extinguish our chalice as we say the closing words to our chalice? Together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our heart until we are together again. Go now in peace, with love in your hearts, kindness on your lips, and compassion at your fingertips, blessing all others as you yourselves are now blessed. Our worship has ended. Now our service begins.